welcome to the Jayda InStitches show, and welcome back to the great odds and ends project. I made myself a blanket ladder, and today's video will hopefully serve as some inspiration and possibly even a blueprint for you to make one yourself if you're so inclined. I know we tend to think about odds and ends as the little things that accumulate in our drawers and cabinets and whatnot, but let's face it, some of the things we hang on to aren't necessarily small. They're the kinds of things that need a corner in the shed or the garage or the basement or maybe even the attic. I have a lot of nice big sticks. I have a lot of trees on the property, and occasionally they need pruning. Sometimes the little ones fall down or need to be taken out altogether. And if they're really nice and straight, I have a hard time kind of parting with them. So I keep them, I trim them up, I clean them. Sometimes I take the bark right off them and I put them aside for craft projects. Well, one of the perfect craft projects that came along was a blanket ladder. I saw several on Pinterest that were kind of rustic looking, and I thought, what a lovely idea. Blanket ladders are such a neat thing. You can make them out of a lot of different things, not just sticks. Maybe you've got handles left over from old lawn tools or brooms or things like that. Maybe you've got a lot of doweling left over from a particular project. Maybe you've got narrow 1x1s left over from some kind of internal renovation. Odds and ends are not necessarily limited to the kind of things we think about when we think of craft supplies. Maybe you've got lumber lying around in the backyard and you could slice it into smaller pieces. Either way, there's a lot you can make a blanket ladder out of. I just happen to have sticks and some leftover yarn, which served the purposes perfectly. I like blanket ladders because you can display your blankets, which is something, if you make a lot of really pretty blankets, and I love the calendar blankets we do, I want them on display. They also will kind of go up a wall in a narrow place. So you can display a bunch of quilts or blankets or shawls or other really pretty pieces of lace or crochet or knitting or quilting in a narrow vertical format, which is great for those sort of awkward parts of walls or maybe like little corners of a room that need something but you don't want to hang another picture. And they're mobile. You don't have to affix them to the wall. You can change the display. Maybe you've got more Christmassy stuff you want to put out, more Halloweeny stuff. You know what I'm saying. I think the options for a blanket ladder are, well, exponential. And I actually plan on making a couple more. I left this one all plain wood. I am probably going to make the next one and paint it all white, because I think that that will look really neat. And I'm still going to use sticks. I have a lot of sticks. Now, they don't have to be this tall. This one is probably about 7 feet tall, maybe a little bit taller. And I put 5 rungs on it all together. They have a nice spacing of about, I don't know, maybe 12 to 14 inches. I literally eyeballed this entire project. I did not measure anything. I just laid the sticks next to each other and sawed off the ends. I laid the sort of the smaller sticks next to each other, and I just kept cutting until I had 5 pieces that were the right size. I actually started with 6, but then I decided that 5 rungs made more sense than 6. 6 was too many. And I wanted a nice spacing between them because I wanted to be able to see a lot of the blanket that I'm hanging. I used power tools. I did the whole thing myself. I have a little miniature chainsaw that I was able to cut these pieces with, so I didn't have to fight with a great big pruner or anything. And I really love that little chainsaw. It's great if you have a lot of trees on your property that require constant pruning, because it takes a lot less energy than a great big pruner set. So I used a little miniature chainsaw to cut the things. I used a couple of electric drills so that I could drill pilot holes and then screw in the screws. So the whole thing is put together with screws. Each of the rungs has 2 screws only, so both in the front. And I just held it in place, drilled the pilot hole, and then hurriedly screwed the screw in. I had both drills going, so I didn't have to worry about taking the bit out of one and then putting it into, like, putting the screw in the other and any of that stuff. If you've done any kind of work with power tools, you know what I'm talking about. So I had both the drills going, and I have to say that was the hardest part for me because I don't have very good grip anymore. I certainly don't have a lot of strength, and you know, holding the tree pieces in place while trying to screw straight down with a heavy power tool took a bit of doing. I had to lean right into it, actually lean in on it with my whole body, but I did it. I eyeballed it, it came out straight, I was super happy. I worked on a table, so that made it a lot more comfortable than, say, trying to do it on the ground and bending over. So having a work table outside was really nice. But I did make it. The whole thing took many months because I selected the wood back in the fall, I cut it, and then I let it winter outside so that the snow and the rain and the freeze thaw would kind of get to it and would help take the bark off it. Then I shaved all the bark off in the spring, which didn't take too long, but I used a hatchet, so I didn't use anything fancy, just a hatchet. And I stood there and I shaved all the bark off, and because I'd let them winter outside, that made the whole process a lot easier, taking the bark off. Then I sanded them lightly and I let them dry for several months. I let them dry in the shed for a few months, just because I didn't want there to be any residual wetness after having taken off the bark. I sanded them again, making sure that there weren't any kind of rough edges, and then I put them together. So the whole pilot holes, screwing them together, and then wrapping the yarn around the actual joints to kind of just give it a little bit of extra strength, plus sort of an aesthetic. I like that rustic cabin kind of look that it has. That whole construction process took me about 2 hours. So the entire project took quite a while, but the actual construction didn't take very long at all. I sort of went, Mr. InStitches helped me get the tools out of the shed, he helped set me up, and then I went to town and built the whole thing myself while he stood in the background and cheered me on from the kitchen. I am delighted with the way it turned out. It is sturdy enough that it can definitely handle 4 or 5 of my heaviest crochet blankets, but I also like to quilt, so I do have some quilted blankets I'll probably be displaying as well. And when the summer turns to fall, turns to winter, I'm considering just decorating it with a bunch of Christmas ornaments. So you might see another video in the future on just decorating the blanket ladder in a different format and dressing it up for Christmas. I might include some blankets, I might include a few ornaments. I've got all sorts of ideas. That's why I'm very excited to make another one. And I feel, since this one came together so easily the first time, making a second or a third won't be that difficult either. And I have a lot of narrow little pieces of wall in the house that need a little bit of decoration. So originally I was going to put this one in the craft room. I have a little spot in behind my reading chair, which I thought would be nice to kind of just hang some blankets. And sure, I could put it there, but I like it so much, and it kind of goes with the decor of the bedroom. I'm going to put it in the bedroom instead, because I really like that cozy, warm look that it has when it's fully decorated with all the blankets. And I have a very boring little slice of wall next to my bed, which could totally use some dressing up. So that's where this one will be living. It'll be living in the bedroom. Like I said, the next couple I make, I'm going to experiment a little more. I even tried a little bit of wood burning on this one. I have a wood burner. I love doing wood burning. That's another little project, kind of craft I like to do now and then, and I hadn't done any for a long time. So I started by thinking, oh, I'll wood burn some vine and ivy kind of curling its way up the logs itself. And then I thought maybe I would just let some of the interesting sort of discolored patches on the wood kind of tell me what they wanted to be. So I tried a couple of different things. I tried a few, a little bit of work on a spare log to start, because I wanted to make sure it wouldn't look weird, or that the wood burning would work out nicely. So I tried a couple things just to kind of get my hand back to it. And then I did put a few at the bottom, which I think look really cute. But ultimately I decided I think I like it plain. So maybe on a future iteration of the blanket ladders, I might do a little bit more wood burning. I'm also considering making a very small one for the desk that I can display little things like doll quilts, or just tinier little pieces of lace, like really cute little samplers of crochet thread lace, or even some doilies. I just think it is such a cute little concept. So whether you make it big for the wall for all your blankets, or actually something small to sit on the desk, they're not that difficult to do. So I've been putting in the odd photo as we go here. I hope that helps kind of illuminate the process. Like I said, it was really just select the sticks, cut them to size, decide how many rungs you want. I really didn't measure. I eyeballed the whole thing. And then I needed screws and a couple of drills, one to drill the pilot holes, a second to screw the screws into place, So there are 5 rungs. That means there's 10 screws in the whole thing. That's the only hardware I used. And then I wrapped all the intersections with a very sturdy, rough looking yarn. I was going to use twine, but the twine tends to kind of pull apart. So this polyester acrylic kind of blend novelty yarn that I have, that I've used for a few other little projects, is kind of squiggly and I didn't really know what else to do with it. It was the right color and it's very strong. So I felt that that would make the perfect little wrap for the intersections. And past that, it's still rough. So I wouldn't be sort of draping anything and then yanking it off. Like I want to be cognizant of the roughness of the wood. Like it's sanded and it's smooth, but there are still like little kind of like bumpy areas. And I'm also, for longer decoration, so if I'm going to like leave some white quilts or something on it for a longer period of time, just knowing that like the humidity can change in the room and the house, I might make little, just little cotton fabric like mats to sort of just sit over the rung itself and then drape the blanket over it. So just so there isn't any necessarily like the oils from the wood don't get onto the blanket, and I just kind of protect the blanket. And then I can wash those little, you know, rags or padding or whatever I want to call it. I'm not going to affix them permanently. I'm just going to drape them there while I'm draping something like a blanket on it, because I don't want to ruin the blanket. But I also don't really want to finish the wood. I considered staining it, I considered oiling it, I considered waxing it, I considered a whole bunch of things, but I just love that raw, the rough, natural look, and I love the smell of it. It's I think it's a cedar, but anyway, I'm not quite sure which these ones are. But I love the way it looks. So like I said, in the next one I make, I'll probably completely paint it, which will, you know, I won't have to worry so much about any of the oils coming out of the wood. If I use paint and make it all white, I think that would look really neat. And I'm also considering making a much smaller one for the desk. And if I get that put together, I will definitely give you a little bit of a video on that as well. I might even film myself making it, because I feel like constructing something smaller would be less cumbersome. I probably won't use screws to put together a smaller one. I might nail it together. I certainly will wrap the intersections, but it won't require the extra strength that this one did, because what it would be holding would be a lot smaller and a lot lighter. Anyway, that is my blanket ladder. I love it. It was a great way to use up some of the sticks that have been lying around the property. And if you were going to make one, you could use, like I said, leftover lumber cut up, leftover broom handles, or the tool sort of handles from long tools in the shed, if you've got some that maybe the ends are kind of a bit messy or broken. And I also think that, I mean, it depends on your decor and your aesthetic, but I think that the more beaten up and weathered the wood or the stick or the handle, the neater it looks. I kind of like that repurposed object thing. It has a very cottagey, rustic kind of appeal. And you can make them look really slick too, if that's sort of the way you like your blanket ladders. You can paint them as well. So lots of options. If you're handy with power tools, or even if you're not, I'm not. I don't consider myself handy with power tools because they're very heavy and I'm very wobbly, and you know, having to hold them in place and everything. I was really worried that I'd make this thing end up looking really wonky, but it wasn't as hard as I thought. And I think part of that was I went into the project going, if it doesn't work, who cares? Because these are leftover things. I'm using leftover hardware from another project that we did around the house. I'm using sticks from the yard, and I'm going to use yarn that I don't care too much about. So if it works out, great. If it doesn't, who cares? It was just sort of a good experiment. So I think if you approach the experiment using odds and ends that you maybe have had lying around for quite a while and you don't know what else you're going to do with them, and you just approach it like, if it works, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If I don't like the look of it, I'll paint it or whatever. I think you'll have a lot more success, because it's not to be taken seriously. And if it works out, great. Even if it doesn't work out, even if it's a bit crooked, it's still going to make a really cute blanket ladder. And you can still drape your blankets on it. So even if it's a little bit crooked, don't worry about it. I think that would add to its charm, especially if you like that kind of cottagey, rustic kind of aesthetic, which I do. Anyway, that's the blanket ladder. I hope you enjoyed this little vloggy blueprint, I suppose, of how I put this one together. And if you make a blanket ladder, or have ever made anything this big out of the odds and ends around your house to sort of display your quilts or blankets, I'd love to hear about it. Please let us know what you made in the comment section down below. And on that note, we will see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches Show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a great week. Bye, guys.
Hi, everybody. Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.